What if the man who changed the world with a single bite of an apple was also a man full of contradictions, failures, and deeply human struggles? Behind the black turtleneck and revolutionary keynotes stood a person who was once fired from his own company, denied his own daughter, and battled inner demons while reshaping the future of technology. This is not the polished story you've heard before. This is the untold story of Steve Jobs. Raw, real, and profoundly human. 1. Early life, adoption, and the search for identity. Steve Jobs was born in 1955 and placed for adoption by his biological parents. He was raised by Paul and Clara Jobs in California, who gave him a loving home and encouraged his curiosity. However, the knowledge of being adopted had a lasting psychological impact. Jobs later expressed that he always felt chosen, yet at the same time he struggled with a sense of abandonment. This emotional contradiction would shape his personality, fueling both his confidence and his intensity. As a child, Jobs was bright but rebellious. He often challenged authority and found traditional schooling uninspiring. Teachers noticed his intelligence, but also his tendency to disrupt the classroom. One of the most significant real decisions of his early life was dropping out of Reed College. After just 6 months, Jobs left formal education, feeling it was too expensive and not meaningful to him. However, he stayed on campus informally, attending classes that genuinely interested him. One such class was calligraphy. At the time, it seemed useless. But years later, the elegant fonts and typography in the Macintosh computer would be directly inspired by this experience. This moment shows how seemingly random choices can shape the future in unexpected ways. 2. Journey to India. Spiritual awakening. In 1974, Jobs traveled to India in search of spiritual enlightenment. This was not a casual trip, it was a deeply personal quest. He lived in rural areas, adopted a minimalist lifestyle, shaved his head, and immersed himself in Eastern philosophy. He faced difficult living conditions, including poor health and limited resources. What makes this journey significant is how it reshaped his thinking. Jobs returned to the United States with a strong belief in intuition. He began to trust his instincts over conventional logic. This mindset later influenced his decision-making at Apple. While others relied on market research, Jobs often relied on his inner sense of what people would want, even before they knew it themselves. 3. The birth of Apple. Vision meets determination. In 1976, Steve Jobs co-founded Apple in a garage with Steve Wozniak. While Wozniak was the engineering genius, Jobs brought vision, ambition, and an intense drive to succeed. The Apple II became one of the first successful personal computers, marking a turning point in the tech industry. Jobs pushed for design, usability, and accessibility, concepts that were not priorities at the time. However, his leadership style was already becoming apparent. Jobs demanded perfection and often pushed his team beyond their limits. He believed that great products required uncompromising standards. Colleagues described his influence as a reality distortion field, where he could convince people to achieve what seemed impossible. This ability helped Apple succeed, but it also created tension within the company. 4. Personal struggles. The Lisa story. One of the most controversial and human aspects of Jobs' life was his relationship with his daughter, Lisa. When Lisa was born, Jobs denied being her father, even in legal proceedings. This decision shocked many, especially given his growing success and influence. At the same time, Apple was developing a computer called the Lisa. Publicly, Jobs claimed the name stood for a technical acronym, but many believe it was connected to his daughter. This contradiction reveals a deeply complex personality. On one hand, Jobs was capable of visionary innovation. On the other, he struggled with personal responsibility. Eventually, Jobs acknowledged Lisa as his daughter and tried to rebuild their relationship. In later years, he expressed regret over his earlier actions. 5. The fall. Fired from Apple. In 1985, internal conflicts at Apple reached a breaking point. Jobs clashed with executives and the board of directors, leading to his removal from the company. Being fired from Apple was a devastating experience. Jobs later described it as one of the most painful moments of his life. He felt rejected and directionless. However, this failure became a turning point. Instead of giving up, Jobs used this period to reinvent himself. This chapter of his life highlights an important truth. Even the most successful individuals face major setbacks. What defines them is how they respond. 6. Reinvention. Next and Pixar. After leaving Apple, Jobs founded a new company called Next. While it struggled commercially, Next developed advanced technology that would later become essential to Apple's future. At the same time, Jobs made a risky investment in a small animation company that would become Pixar. For years, Pixar struggled financially. Jobs personally funded the company, taking significant risks. There were moments when it seemed like the investment might fail. Then came a breakthrough. Toy Story in 1995. It became the first fully computer-animated feature film and was a massive success. This success transformed Pixar into a major force in the film industry and made Jobs a billionaire. More importantly, it proved his ability to succeed beyond the world of computers. 7. The comeback. Return to Apple. 1990s, Apple was struggling and close to collapse. In a surprising turn of events, Apple acquired Next, bringing Jobs back into the company. Jobs quickly took control and began making bold decisions. He simplified Apple's product lineup, eliminated unnecessary projects, and focused on innovation and design. One of his most unexpected moves was partnering with Microsoft, a longtime rival. This decision helped stabilize Apple financially and signaled a new direction for the company. Soon after, Apple introduced groundbreaking products: the iMac, the iPod, the iPhone, the iPad. Each of these products transformed entire industries, from music to communication to computing. 8. Leadership. The harsh reality. Celebrated as a visionary, his leadership style was often key to employees. There were instances where he rejected months of work because it did not meet his standards. Employees often described working with him as both inspiring and exhausting. He pushed people to their limits but also helped them achieve extraordinary results. This dual nature, both inspiring and difficult, was a defining aspect of his personality. Battle. 2003, Jobs was diagnosed with a rare form of pancreatic cancer. Instead of immediate surgery, he initially chose alternative treatments. This decision delayed medical intervention and remains one of the most debated choices of his life. Eventually, he underwent surgery, but his health continued to decline. Despite his illness, Jobs continued to work and lead Apple. He delivered product launches and presentations even when he was visibly unwell. His determination to keep going, even during serious illness, reflects his deep commitment to his work. Legacy. Beyond technology, Steve Jobs passed away in 2011, leaving behind a legacy that changed the world. He transformed how people interact with technology, making it more intuitive, personal, and beautiful. But his legacy is not just about products. It is about thinking differently, challenging norms, and believing in the power of creativity. Jobs showed that success is not about avoiding failure. It is about learning from it and continuing to move forward. The story of Steve Jobs is not perfect. It is filled with contradictions, mistakes, and difficult moments. He was a visionary, but also flawed. He made groundbreaking innovations, but also personal mistakes. He inspired millions, yet challenged those closest to him. This complexity is what makes his story powerful. It reminds us that greatness is not about perfection. It is about persistence, passion, and the courage to keep going, even when everything seems to fall apart. If this untold story gave you a deeper understanding of Steve Jobs and inspired you in any way, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories like this. Don't forget to drop a comment below and tell us what part of his journey impacted you the most.